There is a particular cruelty in football that goes beyond the scoreboard. It exists in the space between what a team believes about itself and what remains true regardless of that belief. Tonight in the desert, Marseille confronted that cruelty head-on. They left having learned nothing new, only having been reminded of something they should have never forgotten. Roberto De Zerbi arrived with a narrative. His team had beaten PSG in their own league 4 months ago, his system had troubled the Parisians, his players had proven they could stand toe-to-toe with French football's dominant force. The data supported this confidence. The momentum suggested possibility. The September result whispered that perhaps finally Marseille had found the formula. What De Zerbi failed to account for is something that does not appear in tactical analysis or expected goals calculations. He failed to account for what PSG have become under Luis Enrique, not a collection of talented individuals, not simply a well-drilled unit, something more troubling for their rivals, a team that has learned how to survive the moments when survival should not be possible. Consider what happened in this match through a different lens. Strip away the noise of rivalry, remove the weight of history. Simply observe the psychological architecture of these 90 minutes plus penalties, and what becomes visible is a truth that Marseille's recent optimism was constructed to obscure. PSG went ahead early. This is not remarkable. What followed was, Marseille dominated territory. They won 12 corners to 3. They tested the goalkeeper repeatedly. They did everything a well-coached team should do when chasing a result. They created enough to deserve more. They produced moments of genuine quality, and slowly, methodically, they clawed their way back into this final. A penalty, an own goal. Suddenly Marseille led with 3 minutes of normal time remaining. They had done it. They had answered the question of September with an emphatic statement in January. They were about to win their first major trophy since 2010. They were about to confirm that the balance of French football had genuinely shifted. 3 minutes, that was all they needed to hold. They could not hold. Core Analysis Part 2, The Anatomy of Psychological Collapse. This is where analysis becomes complicated by factors that resist measurement. What happened in the final moments of this match cannot be explained by tactics alone. It cannot be attributed solely to individual quality or even to fatigue. What happened belongs to a different category entirely. It belongs to the realm of institutional psychology. When a team has lost repeatedly in crucial moments against the same opponent, something embeds itself deep in the collective consciousness. It is not visible. It cannot be coached away in a single season. It cannot be erased by a league victory in September. It exists as a kind of subterranean current, dormant until the moment when it matters most. Marseille led this final. They were organized, they were committed, and yet something shifted in those closing minutes that had nothing to do with formation or fitness. There was a quality of inevitability that crept into the stadium, visible not in any single moment but in the accumulation of small details. A defender taking an extra touch when clearing would have sufficed. A midfielder choosing safety when aggression was required. A team beginning to manage rather than attack the remaining time. This is not a criticism. This is a diagnosis. What Marseille experienced in those final minutes was not a failure of character but a failure of institutional memory. They have lost too many of these moments. Their organization remembers what their minds might try to suppress. And when the pressure reached its apex, when 3 minutes stood between them and vindication, the ghost of all those previous collapses came to collect its due. The equalizer in the 5th minute of stoppage time was not lucky. It was not a fortunate bounce or a moment of isolated brilliance. It was the mathematical certainty of psychological asymmetry. PSG believe at the deepest level of their institutional identity that they will find a way. Marseille fear at that same level that they will find a way to surrender. Both teams got exactly what they expected. Core Analysis Part 3, The Penalty Ritual. Then came the shootout, and here the illusion shattered completely, leaving fragments too small to reassemble. Penalty shootouts are often described as lottery. This description is convenient but inaccurate. Penalty shootouts are rituals. They are ceremonies of psychological truth. The 12 yards between spot and goal become a theater where everything a player and a team believes about themselves is compressed into a single moment of action. Lucas Chevalier stood in the PSG goal. Earlier in this match, he had conceded a penalty. He had made a mistake that lesser teams would use as an excuse for defeat. He had given Marseille an opportunity they converted. By any reasonable assessment, he should have carried that weight into the shootout. Instead, he carried something else entirely. What Chevalier carried was the knowledge of who he represents. He carried the accumulated confidence of an institution that has won this competition 11 times in the past 12 years. He carried the certainty that comes from belonging to a team that has learned to transform adversity into fuel rather than burden. 2 saves, 2 Marseille penalties denied. The shootout became a formality before the fourth kick was even taken. Meanwhile, Marseille's takers approached the spot carrying a different weight. They carried 16 years without this trophy. They carried the memory of the last 5 minutes. They carried the echo of September's victory and its cruel insufficiency. They carried everything their club has been in relation to this opponent for the past decade. The body knows what the mind tries to hide. The legs remember what the brain attempts to forget. And when Matt O'Reilly and Ham Traore stepped up to take their penalties, their bodies betrayed what their minds could not acknowledge. They were not kicking a ball into a net. They were kicking against the accumulated evidence of institutional inferiority. They missed, of course they missed. Core Analysis Part 4, the DEZERBI Paradox. Roberto De Zerbi is among the finest tactical minds working in European football today. His systems are sophisticated, his demands on players are clear, his vision of how the game should be played is coherent and compelling. Under his leadership, Marseille have improved in measurable ways. Their build-up play is more patient, their pressing is more organized, their attacking structure is more varied. None of this mattered tonight, and this is the paradox De Zerbi must now confront. Football is often discussed as if it were a purely technical exercise. Formations are analyzed, statistics are compiled, expected goals are calculated. Within this framework, De Zerbi's work at Marseille represents genuine progress. Within this framework, tonight should have been different. But football is not purely technical. It is also, perhaps primarily, psychological, and psychological transformation operates on a different timeline than tactical improvement. You cannot install belief in the same way you install a pressing trigger. You cannot coach away 2 decades of inferiority in 18 months. You cannot simply decide that history no longer applies. De Zerbi watched his team do nearly everything right tonight. He watched them create chances, dominate territory, recover from an early deficit, take the lead. He watched them execute large portions of his tactical vision with precision and commitment. And then he watched all of it become irrelevant in the space of 8 minutes. This is not his failure, it is simply his inheritance. What De Zerbi inherited when he took this job was not merely a squad and a tactical structure. He inherited a psychological profile. He inherited an institutional relationship with PSG that is written in losses and near misses and moments of collapse. He inherited a history that his tenure, however successful, has not yet had time to rewrite. The question he must ask himself now is whether it can ever be rewritten at all, or whether some psychological structures are simply too deep, too reinforced by repetition to ever be dismantled. Core Analysis Part 5, the Cost of September. It is worth examining what the September victory actually accomplished for Marseille. On the surface, it was significant. Their first win at the Parc des Princes in years, a statement result against the champions, evidence that De Zerbi's project was working. But examine it more carefully, and the September victory may have been the worst possible outcome for Marseille's long-term psychological development. A single victory against a dominant rival can serve one of two purposes. It can be the beginning of a genuine shift in the power dynamic, the first crack in a structure that will eventually collapse. Or it can be a false summit, a momentary plateau that creates the illusion of having arrived while the actual destination remains impossibly distant. Tonight suggests September was the latter. It gave Marseille confidence without foundation. It provided hope without substance. It allowed players and staff and supporters to believe that the relationship between these two clubs had fundamentally changed when nothing fundamental had changed at all. PSG approached this final knowing that September meant nothing in the context of a trophy match. They knew this because their institution has the experience to distinguish between league fixtures and finals. Marseille did not have this experience. They could not have this experience. They were navigating territory they had not occupied in a generation. The September victory may have made tonight's defeat more painful than it needed to be. Had Marseille entered this final with the humility of acknowledged underdogs, they might have played with less tension. They might have approached the final minutes with less to protect. They might have taken their penalties with less burden. Instead, they arrived believing they had earned something. And believing you have earned something when you haven't is perhaps the most dangerous state of mind in competitive sport. Core Analysis Part 6, What the Statistics Missed. The post-match statistics from tonight will tell a story of competitive balance. Possession was nearly even, shot counts were identical, expected goals will likely show a close contest. Corner counts favored Marseille substantially. By almost any metric, this was a match between equals. This is precisely the illusion this analysis seeks to destroy. Equality in statistics is not equality in reality. Two teams can produce identical numbers while existing in entirely different psychological universes. One team can dominate territory while the other dominates certainty. One team can create chances while the other creates inevitability. What the statistics miss is the quality of belief. They miss the moment when a Marseille attacker hesitated where a PSG attacker would have struck. They miss the defensive organization that tightened imperceptibly when PSG needed a goal. They miss the body language that shifted as the match progressed toward its conclusion. They miss everything that actually decided this final. Lucas Chevalier's individual performance captures this disparity better than any aggregate measure. He made mistakes tonight, he conceded a penalty, he had moments of uncertainty, and yet when the shootout arrived, he was transformed. He found a level of performance that his counterpart could not match. He discovered resources that the occasion demanded. This is not about individual quality. Geronimo Rulli is a capable goalkeeper. What separated them in the shootout was not technical ability. What separated them was institutional backing. Chevalier knew with the certainty that only winning provides that his team expected him to save penalties. Rulli knew with the doubt that only losing creates that his team expected something would go wrong. Both goalkeepers got what their teams expected them to get. Core Analysis Part 7, The Future This Match FORETLLS. Nothing that happened tonight changes the fundamental structure of French football. PSG remain the dominant force. Their financial resources remain unmatched. Their ability to attract and retain talent remains superior. Their institutional experience in high-stakes matches remains decades ahead of their nearest rivals. What tonight changes is the narrative surrounding that dominance. The brief window in which Marseille's challenge seemed legitimate has now closed. The suggestion that De Zerbi might be the manager capable of disrupting the hierarchy has been weakened. The hope that September signaled a lasting shift has been extinguished. This matters because football is built on narratives. Players need to believe challenge is possible before they can actually challenge. Supporters need to feel momentum building before momentum can actually build. And after tonight, both players and supporters at Marseille must confront the question of whether their belief was misplaced. The next time these teams meet in a fixture with genuine consequences, Marseille will carry tonight with them. They will carry the final minutes. They will carry the penalty shootout. They will carry the memory of holding a lead and watching it dissolve. This weight will be invisible, but it will be present. And PSG will carry something different. They will carry the confirmation that they cannot be beaten by this opponent when it truly matters. They will carry the evidence that their psychological superiority survives tactical challenge and statistical parity. They will carry the comfort of having been here before and prevailed. In the mathematics of football rivalry, these experiences do not cancel out. They compound. Tonight made PSG's psychological advantage larger, not smaller. Tonight made Marseille's psychological deficit deeper, not shallower. The gap that existed before this match grew wider because of how this match concluded. Core Analysis Part 8, The LUISENRIQUE Factor. It would be incomplete to analyze tonight without acknowledging what Luis Enrique has constructed at PSG. This is not simply a talented squad. This is a team with a specific psychological profile that the Spanish manager has deliberately cultivated. Enrique came to PSG after a career defined by high-pressure environments. Barcelona, Spain's national team, institutions where expectation is oxygen and failure is existential. What he brought to Paris was not merely tactical sophistication, but an understanding of how to build teams that perform when pressure is at its maximum. Watch PSG in the final minutes of tight matches and you see something unusual. You see a team that becomes more rather than less organized as time expires. You see a team that treats adversity as information rather than crisis. You see a team that has been trained at the deepest level to view late-game situations as opportunities rather than threats. This is not accident, this is culture, and culture is built through repeated exposure to pressure combined with consistent messaging about how to interpret that pressure. Enrique has given his players a framework for understanding difficult moments. When they went behind with 3 minutes remaining, that framework activated. When they needed a goal in stoppage time, the framework told them it was possible. When the shootout arrived, the framework told them they would win. Marseille have no equivalent framework. De Zerbi has not had the time to build one. His players have not had the experiences necessary to develop one. Their collective memory is populated with collapses rather than comebacks, with near misses rather than triumphs. Their framework tells them something different than PSG's framework tells them. Cultural change in football organizations takes years. It requires repeated exposure to high-stakes success. It requires the gradual replacement of doubt with certainty, of fear with confidence. Marseille are nowhere near this point in their development, and tonight revealed exactly how far they still have to travel. Final verdict. Marseille did not lose this final in the penalty shootout or in stoppage time. They lost it in September when they believed a league victory meant something it did not. They lost it over 20 years of accumulating evidence that PSG, when trophies are at stake, cannot be matched. They lost it before the first whistle blew in Kuwait. And until they accept that truth rather than fight it, they will keep losing it.